So hello and welcome to another episode of Wiki Weekends. I'm your host for this week's episode, Karl Smallwood, joined as ever off camera and off screen by my lovely friend Lucas Holland.
Hi there. And
today we're talking about one of our favourite shows, Lucas, and I believe we're talking about it again tomorrow for your episode, but today it's my episode and we're talking about The Boys.
Yeah, we decided, we like this show so much, let's do a little celebratory launch weekend for, season 4, I think it is.
Yes, so tune in tomorrow to see what specifically Lucas has picked about The Boys universe to talk about. But I today have just picked The Boys TV series as a whole. Because, it's been a while since it's been on the airways, and I would like to, familiarise myself and catch myself up on all the goings-on in The Boys. So potential spoilers for anything up to the 4th season of The Boys, but no spoilers for the new episodes because they're not out when we're recording this. Also, if they are out when you're watching this and it's been less than 6 months, don't spoil it for everyone at home. Just don't be a dick.
Yeah, we generally keep the rule at a 6-month rule of thumb for the internet of it's been out 6 months, try and give a spoiler warning, but you can't be continuing to walk on eggshells forever. And I will request, Karl.
Yes.
If you could, try to stray from Gen V spoilers because I've not seen it.
You've not seen Gen V, so that means you've got something to watch next week then in the lead up to The Boys, because Gen V is very good.
Freshman class is savage this year.
Yeah, we often end up watching things as we're eating some food, and we started watching Gen V, and just, when the first person, melted or exploded or whatever, as people tend to do on boys' shows, it was maybe eating food is not the best thing to do while we watch this.
Yeah, The Boys isn't a great show to, eat when you're watching it. I think the first episode of every season has, a thing that's oh, I don't like that. And every subsequent season has had a new worse thing. In season 1, it's just Huey's girlfriend just gets obliterated 5 minutes into the episode.
Yeah.
Season 2, do you remember what the one in season 2 is? I can't. Because I know the season 3 one is where it's they crawl into the guy's dick and explode.
Yeah.
Was it in between someone getting blown up by a speedster running through them and someone having their lower half detonated because the guy was crawling around in their dick? What's in between that?
I don't know, but it can't be good.
It can't be good, and it's just one of those shows where you'll watch it and you go, oh, and that's kind of the beauty of The Boys. But so that we're all on the same page, I won't go through the wiki now. A link to it you can find below. So The Boys is an American satirical superhero television series developed by Eric Kripke for Amazon Prime Video, based on the comic book of the same name by Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson. It follows the eponymous team of vigilantes as they combat superpowered individuals who abuse their powers. And The Boys is one of those rare adaptations. It stands alongside the likes of Jurassic Park and Fight Club, where it's near universally agreed that it's better than the thing it's based on.
Hi, my name is Chuck Palahniuk, and I'm the author of really just Fight Club. And that's why I've written Fight Club for kids.
Right, yeah. I was going to say, Garth Ennis's comic book is, very different, right?
It's similar in tone, but it's a lot more cynical, which is very Garth Ennis. He's a very cynical writer when it comes to his superhero work. And the example I always use is from, I think it's 2 or 3 issues into The Boys. Butcher, lovable Butcher. Carl Urban swanning around, just giving one-liners and slapping people.
If there is some geezer up there with a big white beard, he's a world heavyweight cunt.
I'm sorry, did you just call God a C word?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the comics, he's a lot more jaded, and one of the first things he does is make his bulldog, I think, rape a poodle.
Oh, God.
Because edge.
Yeah, and, I just clicked on, Garth Ennis's wiki page, and it says, they did a lot of writing on The Punisher, so going from The Punisher to writing Billy Butcher makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and he's a very cynical writer when it comes to his his take on superheroes, which is a valid viewpoint, but I feel like it's too dour. The easiest way to see that is if you watch the spin-off Diabolical. There is one of the shorts that is directly cribbed from the original comic books, and it's just you're watching it and you just find yourself asking, did it really, like, okay, we get it, superheroes fucking suck. Did it need to go this far? Like, there's one of the villains they talk about who specifically masturbates with the blood of terminally ill children.
He was at a party last year. Private celebration after he gave the commencement address at Columbia. Took a couple of honours students for, well, I suppose you'd call it a flying fuck. Thing is, it's a bit fucking cold way up there. By the time they twigged he didn't give a shit, that it was part of the fun for him, it was too late.
And it's just one of those things of like, I get it, superheroes suck in this universe. I get it. I really do, but was that necessary?
Yeah, it's when we talk about characters being, like, too try-hard. Like, that is the almost, like, storyline equivalent, isn't it?
And I imagine that there are people out there who prefer that version of The Boys, but I do not count myself among them. I read the first few issues of the comic, and just, it did not grip me, because it was just beating me over the head with superhero bad, you know how bad they are. It's like, yeah, but this isn't entertaining. This is just, it just makes me uncomfortable to read.
Yeah, right. And I do think that a lot of the intrigue comes when it's, like, you know, got a little bit more maybe nuance to it, a bit more vagueness to it, and like you see moments where a lot of different characters who are superheroes maybe question whether they should be being the dickheads that they are, and, you know, maybe, for example, like Starlight being that jaded, like, you know, kind of POV for the audience of just, oh, holy shit, this is completely fucked up and we shouldn't be like this.
Yeah, there's also as well just more nuance and depth to the characters in, like, you know, the live action version. And you mentioned Starlight there. Just another thing is, like, one of the first things that happens in the show, and indeed happens in the comic, is when Starlight joins the Seven and the Deep comes in and sexually harasses her. In the original comic, it's every male member of the Seven makes Starlight do that.
Right, fucking hell. Yeah.
And it's just one thing, again, really uncomfortable to read, and it leaves very little room for nuance. Because one of the things I'll say, you end up hating the characters, and you 100% want Butcher to go in and kill them all. But if that was the show, I would not be watching a show with characters that unlikable. Because that's the thing of, like, the most unlikable character on the show is Homelander. He is, like, irredeemably evil. But there is still some moments of levity and humanity in there, as much as he'd probably hate that. And there are those little character moments that make him, at the very least, like, you know, just engaging to watch. Like, he has the very magnetic performance of Anthony Starr.
All right. You fucking cocksuckers.
I was gonna say, like, more likability to the characters, but maybe not.
Yeah, that's
necessarily.
There's just more depth, right? And, you know, speaking of the cast, the show features an ensemble cast that includes, but not limited to, Karl Urban, Jack Quaid, Anthony Starr, Erin Moriarty, Dominique McElligott, Jesse T. Usher, Chase Crawford, Laz Alonso, Tomo Capone, Karen Fukuhara, and Nathan Mitchell. And do you have a favourite character from the show? Or should I say favourite actor who plays a character on the show? Because you know what mine is.
I mean, my favourite character in terms of from the performance alone is Karen Fukuhara.
Which is mine as well, and I have the biggest crush on Karen Fukuhara because I'm a huge fan of, like, all of her voice work, because that's how I primarily knew her before she was on the show. Because I was like, do you know that great thing Amazon does where you scroll and it goes the X-ray when you're in a scene, like, who's that guy? Who is that actor? What are they from? And you just scroll down, it shows you. I did that with Karen Fukuhara, and I was like, who is she? What? Like, I know her from something. And I scroll down, and it says, oh, known for playing Glimmer in The Princesses of Power. And I'm like, no wonder I didn't recognise her, because she never fucking speaks.
Just let Glimmer handle this.
Yeah, I was going to say, ironically, I knew her for voice work, and then she was in
speak.
The Boys,
That's
and
why
she didn't speak.
Because I remember, like, seeing, like, pictures of her in, like, interviews for the show, but I was like, I didn't hear the voice, so I didn't realise, and I just found that really funny. But no, originally intended to be a feature-length film, comic book series adaptation began its development in 2008 with Adam McKay set to direct. Due to creative differences between the crew and the studio that picked up the film, the project was left in development hell. The development for the project was revived in 2016 by Cinemax, who announced that it would be reworked as a television series. Kripke was recruited to be the showrunner, while Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg were the executive producers. And can we give a shout out to Seth Rogen for being an executive producer on this show? And like casting himself in it is like Cumlord 69.
Oh god, yeah.
Just he has a cameo every season. It's always the worst cameo.
I love our little chats, but meter's running, so.
Hold your horses, there comes a lot. 779.
Yes, Countess.
He's got a good eye for picking decent projects, and he's very, very self-depreciating. It's like, who are you going to cast yourself as in his show? Oh, Cumlord. It's got to be Cumlord, right? I think that's his name, or Jizzmaster or something.
Some weird shit like that,
but just when he turned up, I just could not stop laughing. When it smash cuts and says, executive producer Seth Rogen, and goes to his face. I was howling at that one. Would you have any, speaking of, cameos, the show is very star-studded in its ensemble cast, but it has a lot of cameos as well. Do you have a favourite one of those?
I can't remember what specific cameos there were, to be honest.
There's quite a few. I think my favourite one is Haley Joel Osment as Mesmer. It's like, failed, washed-up child actor Haley Joel Osment playing washed-up child superhero. It's like, you know what? I appreciate that, again, like, Haley Joel Osment has that self-depreciation about him. Like, he can acknowledge, okay, you want someone to play a washed-up child actor in this universe? Who better?
Yeah, I guess that can be me, because that just reflects a lot of what happened to him himself. But, like, I love the fact that they're just dragging him around, like, read this person's mind as well. He's like, leave me the fuck alone, guys.
Well, the really harrowing thing is I rewatched the first season when I was ill, like last year, I want to say. And there's the bit where, like, just Billy Butcher is beating the fuck out of him, and every time Butcher punches him, he reads the intention, and he realises that he's going to die, and that Butcher is going to kill him.
Oh.
It's like then when he starts strangling him, and you can see into Butcher's mind, he's asking for mercy. He's trying to like probe into his mind to try and figure out, is there anything I can say to get him to not kill me?
What did you expect me to do? It was a Homelander.
You gotta talk to me.
Wait, no, I can help you.
And he realizes he's got nothing left. There's no way that I'm going to be able to, get through to him, because there's nothing. All he cares about is killing supers. This is what he wants.
Please, I have a daughter. No.
Yeah, it's super messed up, but it is one thing that I do appreciate the show for, is it followed that, like, kind of similar vibes to Game of Thrones, where it genuinely feels like nobody is safe. And
of course, yes.
Obviously, Game of Thrones, as the years went on, plot armor started to thicken, but
just a tad, yeah. There was a lot of teleportation in that last season of Game of Thrones, and it feels somewhat similar in The Boys, where in season 3 I was expecting there's one of the main characters going to die, right? And they teased it a little bit, Karen Fukuhara, Kimiko loses her powers, you think she's gonna die, and then Frenchie gets tied up by that Russian mob boss lady, and you think, oh, is this gonna be their end? And then they don't. And then they talk about how the Temp V is just gonna melt your brain, and then that never happens, or that's probably gonna be a plot point in the next season.
The Boys, they do feel like they have a bit of plot armor, but the rest of the cast, you're like, oh look, they're setting up this character to go through this clearly cool development and stuff, and then they just blow up or something.
Nope.
It's like, right.
It's like, oh, here's Starlight's ex. He's a former superhero. Dies off screen. He's dead. Homelander killed him. And can we just give a big shout out to just how terrifying Homelander is throughout that show? And obviously, a lot of superhero media, especially more recently, has tackled the trope of, what about if Superman was just a dickhead?
Yeah, I mean, in the past, 10 years, we've had, Injustice, Gods Among Us 1 and 2, we've had Invincible and The Boys, all three becoming, very popular.
And quite understandably, in those bits of media, they show that the scariest thing about Superman just not caring about people anymore is that he's bulletproof and super strong. What the fuck are you going to do to actually stop him? Which is the same thing with Homelander. And they talk about that on the show of we don't actually know if anything on Earth can hurt him. And that is the primary threat that Homelander faces, just that he's so strong and so durable. They don't actually know how to deal with him if he decides to go rogue. And even says that, doesn't he? If you out me, I'm just going to go fly into the White House and the Pentagon. And then I'll hit all of, like, the major, power grids and stuff and just burn the country down. Because who's the fuck's going to stop me?
First, I'll take out the nerve centers. White House, the Pentagon. Then any domestic defense capabilities, and then critical infrastructure, like cellular, internet, that kind of thing. And then, well, I think then, I'll just wipe New York off the fucking map. For fun.
I think, like, the scariest part about the way Homelander is written is that he's, like, actively willing to just do whatever the fuck he wants. And obviously, they've set up where, like, at the end of season 3, he goes completely off the rails and people start celebrating him for it.
Yeah. And, like, he's realised, I don't even need to hide it anymore. But the thing I was going to mention is there's other aspects of Superman's power set that are scary, but not as immediately obvious as him being able to, like, throw a mountain into the White House, or like Omni-Man is, like, fly so fast that the atmosphere catches on fire. And it's his super sensors. And they have multiple moments on the show where you find yourself going, oh my god, I didn't realise Homelander could do that. That's terrifying. Like where he's giving the A-Train some shit in the corridor. And he's calling him like a fat fuck. And then, like, he walks down the corridor and under his breath, A-Train says, like, man, fuck you, or something like that. Like, so quiet. And Homer's like, what'd you say?
What did you say?
Nothing. Nothing?
What did you say to me?
I'm sorry.
I don't even think he says that. I think he, like, says, like, I fucking heard that. Or, he literally tells him, like, I know exactly what you've just said.
Yeah.
Be fucking careful.
And then they have moments in the show as well where they've got to play really loud music. It's like, why have we got to do this? Like, Homelander can hear us. It's like, how far away can he hear us from? We don't know.
And I think it's a nice kind of implication that when she's doing that with her ex-boyfriend to cover up that conversation of, like, we need to do something, the implication is that he can still hear it, he just doesn't give a shit until he decides to do something.
Yeah. Like, he'll hear the music and it'll be more difficult for him. If he decides to pay attention, he'll come to see what's going on. Or like when he talks to Maeve and he says, I can smell Butcher on you. I know what he smells like. Or when he's talking to Stan Edgar and he can hear his heartbeat and he can tell when he's, like, scared. And that's when you have the great moment where he's listening to Edgar's heartbeat. And just Edgar just stares him down, like Giancarlo Esposito just gives him, like, that fucking just no fucks given stare. And Homelander gets annoyed so he can tell that he's not scared of him.
Maybe it's time I move on. How do you think your shareholders would feel about that?
And then you have, like, I guess we've got to give a shout out to the moment as well where he's just going off script on stage screaming. And, like, Colby Minfie's in the... Ashley is in the recording with, like, we need to shut him off. He's like, don't you dare fucking turn me off.
Yeah.
Because on top of everything he's doing, he's made, like, in this... The fact he has that level of awareness about his surroundings.
I'm not some weak-kneed fucking crybaby that goes around fucking apologizing all the time. And why the fuck would you want me to
Go
be?
to fucking commercial, Roger. Go to fucking commercial.
Don't you dare stop rolling, Roger.
Because you think he's losing control, but even when he's losing control, he still has, like, just absolute awareness of everything within, like, a quarter mile of his location. And that's really interesting, and it's really scary, and it's not something I've ever seen really explored in other bits of media. Even other bits of media, they talk about Superman going rogue.
That's the thing, is you do get it a little bit every now and then with Superman, where you'll see, like, the shot of him, listening out for cries for help from space and shooting back down. But it's not explored in, like, that menacing kind of way for the most part. And
like, how scary would it be if, like, the most powerful man on Earth knew exactly what you were doing, you could hear everything you were saying, no matter where you were.
Yeah, and, like, it's one of those things where Homelander is portrayed in, like, a much less powerful world, I guess, is, like, he's definitely not as strong as Superman is in the comics, but...
What does that matter when he's, like, nothing in his universe can hurt him?
Yeah, in comparison to everything else, he's still top dog, and the fact that they managed to, like, show off his super senses in such different ways that most don't tend to bother with is really cool.
So now we'll go on to development here, and it mentions that, as we discussed earlier, The Boys was in various stages of development to become a film between 2008 and 2016. with Adam McKay directing and a budget of $100 million until the project was abandoned over creative differences, which is usually code in Hollywood for drunken fistfight in a car park. But in April 2016, the film adaptation was cancelled and it was announced that Cinemax were developing a television series adaptation of the comic book instead. And it mentions that, Evan Goldberg and Cumlord 98 came in, who at the time were working on the series Preacher, also based on a comic book series by Ennis. And I've also read Preacher, and I'm just going to say, it's very, very Garth Ennis.
Preacher! Enough!
Almost done, Sheriff.
And I would be quite interested to see the television show if it's similar to The Boys, where Seth Rogen's gone in and sanded down some of that edge.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, obviously not to a detrimental degree, really, because I there's nothing really that I'm aware of from The Boys, the comic book, where I still don't get the same kind of resonance from those events and characters. Like, I still get the same ideas behind it, but maybe it's just a bit less exaggerated, which is saying something when you watch The Boys.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's always hilarious when you talk about The Boys, and if you talk to someone about The Boys and they've read the comic books, they always love going, you should read the comics, you haven't seen anything. Like, the superhero orgy? Everyone always talks about in the comics it's much worse. It's like, well, no, in the comics it's just really uncomfortable. Like, you kind of get it. You don't need much more explicit than what you got in the show, which we can't put a clip in of, but if you're watching this, you've seen that episode.
One of the most explicit TV shows I've ever watched, and it's like, man, this is nothing compared to the comic books.
And that's what people love to say. It's like, oh, if you think that's bad, you've seen nothing. It's like, I don't want to see anything worse, though. It's like when you talk about Saw. It's like, oh, those Saw movies are kind of gory, right? It's like, you've seen nothing yet. And it's like, okay, sure, I know there are a lot of gorier films out there, and good on you, but that's a level that's enough for me. And it's like just one of those weird things people always feel like, you've seen nothing yet. And here's the thing, everything people are saying that I should go watch, I've seen. I've watched them all. And I don't like them, so I just don't. And also, they're not very good fodder for the video series that we're making here, because you can't put clips in of that shit. Like, I've seen Martyrs, I've seen a Serbian film. They're not good fodder for these videos, and they're not fun to talk about.
Me just sitting here with Karl saying, I've watched everything you've all recommended. I'm like, you never watched One Piece, though.
Because I was too busy watching just French art house, fucking slasher movies. So, writing. The series takes place in a universe where most of the superpowered people, known as Supes in universe, pretend to be heroic to ensure they are loved by the public, while working for Vought, which is a company that monetizes and markets them. But in reality, outside their heroic personas, they are corrupt celebrities who abuse their power out of selfishness and for personal gain, which serves as a deconstruction of the superhero genre and the idealisms of heroes that they are supposed to represent, in contrast to Marvel and DC.
Hello, I'm Soldier Boy. Did you know drugs and drug-related crime have become a nationwide problem?
And Lucas, what is your favourite swipe at a DC or Marvel property within The Boys? Because mine is just the rise of the Seven as a whole, because it's kind of a pastiche of both the MCU stuff and the DC stuff, because they say, oh, it's this wider shared universe where they talk about every fucking character you don't care about, but then they talk about Rise of the Seven undergoing a lot of rewrites. And then they're releasing the Homelander cut, because they realise, oh shit, we accidentally had a Nazi in our superhero movie.
Guess this means we're breaking up. Nazi bitch.
Oh god.
Did you see, they had jokes, they do really good marketing for this, where they have the Twitter accounts and stuff that are pretending to be in the universe of The Boys.
Yeah.
They had the director in the show tweeting in real life about the release of the cut of like the special, like, I don't know what they call it. I think like they call it the Todd cut or whatever. I forget exactly what they call it. But then Zack Snyder was like retweeting it, going, "Good work, guys."
Oh god.
So another person who's actually got a sense of humor about themselves.
Yeah, I did actually get caught out the other day. I was just double checking what video it was. I remember clicking on YouTube and seeing a video and was like, what is going on here? And it was like the Vought International YouTube channel, which do a really good job of like...
That's so good.
With Vought Plus, you have the power to control the greatest content in the world.
Enjoy the action and the excitement of all of your favorite Vought Studio films and series. Plus,
stay informed with reliable news you can count on.
Putting videos out there as if Vought International was a real company. And
yeah, like they're putting out like quarterly reports about, you may have heard that our primary superhero, Homelander, is a Nazi war criminal. We stand with Homelander. And you can just see like off screen fucking like Homelander's lasers on like fucking Ashley's head.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ashley Barrett. Despite numerous headwinds, Vought and our heroes have never been stronger.
The other day, it was like last week, I saw this thing and it was their video, Singer Newman 2024, a stronger American. And I was like, oh no, is someone else coming out the sidelines for like the American presidential election?
Like,
What's
it's
going
so
on?
perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're like parodies of like pop culture and real world events are so perfect. And I guess we have to mention just the protest, which like is based on something that no longer exists, and that was the Kylie Jenner Pepsi protest commercial.
Yeah.
Which they reference in the show, and it's just the fact that like A-Train's like, this is more important. And he gives like the can of like A-Train juice. And it's like, I care about this protest. This nondescript protest with like just really well-groomed people of various ethnicities yelling at the police in a polite fashion.
A-Train, where are you going? Almost ready to shoot.
This is important.
And I do think that's one of like the real strength of the show is like in season 1, obviously you're almost immediately told like, oh, A-Train is horrible, The Deep is horrible, Black Noir is horrible, as well as the rest of the 7. But like over time, when you get to see like A-Train having to be forced to wear like the different new like representative suit that he's got to wear and all this.
No, that's it. He wants to wear that, Lucas. He wants to wear the Wakanda Forever suit. That's the one that he pictures. They don't want him wearing it.
They don't want him to wear it and all this. But then, like, also, like, the stuff with the Deep getting into the cult. And it's, like, just the ability to be able to be uncomfortable in those people's shoes.
Yes.
And, like, to create that weird level of, like, empathy for them, but at the same time you're sitting there and going, but you also are getting what you deserve here.
It's like they almost make you feel bad for the characters, but then you have the Schadenfreude of just like, well, you deserve it. You completely brought it on yourself. Like A-Train, like he like runs through Huey's girlfriend.
Yes.
Like the opening episode is like he kills someone and doesn't give a fuck. And they have like later in the season
to apologize until like he has to just do the corporate mouthpiece apology, but then doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, like he doesn't give a shit so hard he doesn't recognise Huey when he bumps into him later.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a great bit later in it where like Huey breaks his leg, and while he's like yelling at him and like during his like just super drug high, he's like, "What did I ever do to you?" And you even see it's a great bit of acting from Jack Quaid where you see him like do a double take where he's gonna correct him and go, "What?
The only good thing in my life is gone now. What is this, man? I kill your girlfriend and you kill mine?
I didn't kill your girlfriend.
You used her.
Because in A-Train's head, he can't understand what he's done wrong, and that makes what's happening to him so cathartic and so darkly hilarious. Because you just see him going, "What did I ever do to deserve this?" It's like, we know what you were such a prick.
The only difference between you and me is that I made a mistake. The shit that you did was on purpose. So who's worse?
Like, you're such a prick, you don't even know. Like, or remember killing people and just running through them and shit.
And also we have like the great teardown from Ashley, isn't it? Where she just yells at him and goes, "You deserve all of this." Where she straight up just says, like, you know, let's not pretend you're innocent here. Let's not forget about your 4 confirmed murders that we covered up.
I have spent over 100 hours in crisis management meetings, specifically figuring out how to cover up your bullshit, including all 3 of your straight-up murders while you were out in the club with your crew or getting your toe sucked by Popclaw, who, let's not forget, you also murdered. Yeah, that's right. I know about that.
And then, like, when he's in the hospital bed with, like, the racist heart, and he's like, wait, what? And it's like, yeah, your brother... the guy who, like, brutalized him is not gonna, like, get any repercussions for what he did. He's gonna die a hero. We're gonna rewrite, like, you know, history, essentially. We're gonna make you walk around and do, like, be a mouthpiece for him and his legacy. Also, like, fuck you, because now we own you. We're gonna, like, completely change your backstory. And we're gonna make you appear in a super racist movie. And you're gonna dance. You're gonna dance like our little toy soldier. Because we own you now, because this is literally the bed you made, you're gonna lie in it.
Oh my god, I almost forgot. We are already working on your new movie, Training A-Train. Gritty biopic. You're a roughneck gangbanger from the South Side, slanging that yayo, when a track coach, we're thinking Tom Hanks, teaches you a more civilized way.
And it's like, that's a rough scene to watch, but then at the same time, it's like, I just say, like, the Schadenfreude, like, the ultimate comeuppance of, like, no, fuck you. You deserve so much more.
You deserve this, yeah. It's like with the Deep. Because I know, like, a lot of people felt really uncomfortable in the scene where he has to eat the octopus.
But that's literally what he did to Starlight, and it's meant to be the, you know, allegory of that.
Yeah, it's like when you see him, if people don't know what we're talking about here, I'm not going to be too graphic, because we do want to get this video monetized. Like, cheers to everyone for watching it, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, but... The Deep forces Starlight to put something into her mouth that she doesn't want to ensure her place on the 7. Homelander does the exact same thing to him, and just like, as well, the visual symmetry of like when he's biting down and all the ink flies out of his mouth, and it's like, yeah, it's pretty on the nose what that's like representative of.
But I think, obviously, the sympathy there for me is for the octopus, because I can hear the octopus crying. It's like, no.
But that's when you think of, like, did the Deep think about Starlight's feelings when he was doing that?
Exactly, yes.
And that's what the show is so great at, of, like, it's like, it pays off all of these moments. And all the characters who do bad things get their comeuppance, with the sole exception of Homelander, he's going to end up getting, like, the biggest comeuppance ever, right? There is going to be the biggest beatdown ever on Homelander, surely, at some point in this next season.
And it was very satisfying towards the end of season 3, where they are all, like, doing their best to beat the shit out of him, and it is satisfying to watch, and, like, you get so close, and then it's like, oh, god damn it, but it's got to be building up to a moment that's even worse and even more cathartic to watch.
Yeah, and, you know, in that vein, do you have a favourite just character getting a comeuppance moment? And why is it just Todd getting absolutely just fucking annihilated by Mother's Milk?
You're not her father. Someone's got to be.
That's such just the way he just drops him.
And I think one of my favourite combinations of title and thumbnail on YouTube is the HD clip someone uploaded of that moment, where it's just like, the screenshot is obviously halfway through the punch, with like the little 4K symbol in the corner, and then the title is just Mother's Milk folds colonizer Todd like clean laundry. Because he fucking cleans that guy's cloth, and it's so satisfying, right? When you see Mother's Milk and he's like, hey, like, you know, you be a weird, like, you know, Trump supporter all you fucking want. Do not take my daughter to a Trump rally. Fuck you. Yeah. And he's like, well, maybe she just needs a fat... But any of those?
Oh, God. Like, it's hard to, like, think now, because it has been a couple of years now for me where I haven't watched the show since, like, season 3 came out. I do like the moment where like Starlight and A-Train have that fight near the end, and he's just like A-Train. Just he doesn't get killed or anything. He just get fucked over a little bit.
Yeah. There's also the moment where Huey just clocks him one on the jaw. And it's probably the first time in his life he's ever felt pain, except when Kimiko breaks his leg.
Yeah. I think, like, maybe another great moment is just when Homelander and Billy Butcher square up one another in Hero-gasm.
Yes.
And you just see, like, Homelander go, what the fuck?
What did you do?
What have you done?
And
when did you get powers?
Yeah. And throughout that fight scene, you see, like, at first he's curious, and he even finds it kind of amusing. He's like, what did you do?
What have you done? Scorched earth.
But then, as he realizes, oh, Butcher is almost as strong as I am, you see him start to panic. And then you see him get angry. And that's where you get like the rage scream. He just flies off into the air because he has to run away. Like a huge bitch coward.
And just, that moment where it's like, you spent so long with no one able to, stand up in like a fist fight, square on with Homelander, and then you get to see it happening for the first time, and you're like, oh yeah, that feels good.
First time that someone's ever been able to physically stand up to Homeland, and he does not like it. And continue with the writing here. Despite keeping its faithfulness to the source material, the series does not fully follow the storyline from the comic books in order to retain a sense of realism. Given that Kripke considered that some of the concepts and characters from the comics were too fantastical for their portrayal in the television adaptation. There's also, I think, very diplomatically in interviews he's talked about how there's some elements that would not translate well to the screen or would not allow audiences to empathise as much as we'd like with the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Such as Billy Butcher just making his dog rape dogs.
Yeah.
Just turning his dog into a dog rapist for no reason.
Right.
He also mentions that the other reasons for the changes is that the adaptation takes place in a different time period to the comic books, with the TV show taking place in late 2010s and the comics taking place in 2000s. Which I didn't know.
No, and obviously that doesn't sound like a massive deal in terms of, technology hasn't necessarily come that far, but...
Think about how much the world's changed.
I was going to say, think about how different, for example, the political landscape is in America between now and 10, 15 years ago.
So it was being written in the wake of 9/11, and then this show is being written and made in the era of Trump. Two very different political landscapes in the United States. And he does mention
one
here
that they don't shy away from at all.
They don't, and that's mentioned here. But just finally, it says that it's intended to run for 5 seasons, though Eric Kripke has talked about how you can never really know how long something's going to go on, making a joking allusion to Supernatural, which went on for 13 seasons, on which he was a showrunner.
I don't remember whether people were saying that there's a supernatural character in The Boys, but I know that there was obviously there's a lot of crossover between the actors used.
Yes.
But I can't remember whether it was here's just a reference to Supernatural or something that they've hidden as an Easter egg.
There probably is, but we don't watch enough Supernatural to have got it. But the fact they cast, what's his name? It's going to annoy me now. The guy who played the Supernatural guy, Soldier Boy.
I know who you mean.
Yeah. This is either staying in or getting cut, depending on how quick we can do it. Have a look. Jensen Ackles.
That's
I was just real. I've got the wiki in front of me. I can just look it up. What an idiot! But speaking of casting here, there's a few little tidbits that are worth noting. One of them is that Simon Pegg was cast in the role of Huey's father. This is a nod to the original comics, where Huey was based physically on Simon Pegg. However, when they cast the show, Simon Pegg was too old. So they cast him as Huey's father instead, and I'll put in a side-by-side of Simon Pegg and Huey in the comics. So that was a little nod to that.
And that's the thing, right? It's it's a fun little cameo to throw Simon Pegg in there as a dad, and it definitely wouldn't make sense to make him like Huey nowadays.
It could work, but they'd have to like age up the character, and they wanted the character to be younger because like, he has that relationship with Starlight, and that'd be kind of weird if there was like a 20 to 30 year age gap between like the actors.
Yeah.
And finally, politics. The thing that there are people out there who I don't get this, somehow insist aren't part of The Boys.
Like, it's bizarre to me that there are literal parts of The Boys that are talking about, like, election campaigns. Even if you weren't thinking about, like,
parallels to the real
there's
world.
A lot of allegories for political statements to be made within characters and stuff. There's literal politics within it.
Yeah, and I think one of my favourite interactions I had with someone before I realised that there's no point talking to this person, they just don't get it. Where it's like, well, the comic books were, like, you know, written 15 years ago. How can The Boys possibly reference or be, like, you know, making allusions to the presidency of Donald Trump? It's like, when is the TV show being made? It's like, no, but the TV show has been based on the comics, and the comics don't do that. It's like, but the comics and the TV show are different things. One is a comic book, one is a TV show. They're different. It's like, no, it's based on the comics, and the comics were released before it happened. How can that possibly be a thing? And it's like,
yeah, it's based upon, it's inspired by, it's an adaptation.
Oh, yes, but no, speaking of politics, the seasons explore numerous political and thorny issues, such as, but not limited to, white nationalism, white supremacy, systemic racism, and xenophobia. And which of those are your favourite, Lucas? Like, in terms of how it's referenced in the show?
I was like, I don't really like any of this, Karl.
I just want that to, like, you know, that to be a sound clip. No, don't sound clip that. It's a joke. It's a joke.
Do you really think I'm gonna let a fucking Muslim in the 7? Captain Al Qaeda, we're Americans.
I'm taking this to Mr. Edgar.
My definitive statement is I don't like any of it.
Well, in terms of, like, you know, which of the heavier topics that they address, because I do like the way they basically just do not give a fuck and have, like, no quarter when it comes to Stormfront. When they bring Stormfront in, and it's just the instant she gets outed as a Nazi, even Homelander is like, okay, I'm bad, but I'm not that bad.
I'm not a Nazi.
Like, you have that bit, don't you, where, like, you know, he takes her to see his son, and she crouches down. He's like, look, there's this thing called, like, white replacement theory or something like that, and you see Homelander go, because he realises, oh, like, they always told me don't stick my dick in crazy. I didn't realize she was this crazy.
It's called white genocide. And we're gonna need people like you to protect our kind.
Even him, he's still been brought up as, like, an American boy.
Yep.
And with, you know, those trusted, like, you know, American values, and obviously the way that it's been twisted for Homelander, he's gone like nearly completely insane at this point with the power that he's got. But even he's still sane enough to be like, but I ain't a Nazi. Jesus.
And that's one of the things, like, even the most corrupt evil person on the show is like, I'm not that bad. And it mentions that here. Like, Kripke stated that unlike the comics where Stormfront is male, the character will be gender swapped for the series with the intention of creating Homelander's worst nightmare. There'll be a strong woman who wasn't afraid of him and proceeded to steal his spotlight. And also, the design of Stormfront in the show is far more subtle than the design in the comics.
That place used to be pure. And then they just started letting all kinds of people in, you know?
I don't know. So why don't you tell me?
Aya Cash plays a more subdued version of that, but there are still some nods to, like, you know, her true identity for, like, you know, any eagle-eyed viewers out there, including the eagle on her belt, which is based on, like, the Nazi eagle. Her, like, earrings, which are thunderbolts, but if you put them side by side, it's the SS symbol. And her name, Stormfront, is a reference to, it's the most obvious one, is, like, the biggest neo-Nazi website on the planet. Which is just
well, that's the clever thing where they play it in such a good way to, like, yeah, there are allusions there, but if you're not looking out for them, maybe you can just think, like, the name is an allusion to the fact that she's got lightning powers, same with the thunderbolts.
And that's what makes it clever. And that's what it's far more subtle than it is in the comics, which makes it more interesting to watch. Like, because if she just rocked up and she's just wearing a big fucking Nazi flag on her chest, it's like, okay, we get it, she's the bad guy, but the way they do it in the show, it allows them to tell a more interesting story of, like, and one that's very relevant of how she's able, like she even says it, doesn't she? Like, people like the things I want to say. They just don't like the word Nazi. Which is a really fucking harrowing line when you think, like, yeah, that's a thing that happens. Like, you have, like, literal Nazis and white nationalists and stuff throwing their lot behind far-right figures, hoping that the messaging that they're saying will, like, they can siphon off, like, you know, their audience and, like, you know, just make them even more extreme. And it's terrifying.
Yeah, and again, it's like, you know, a lot of different statements being made about the current landscape, and the idea that there's a lot of people out there that are using these kind of phrases and terminology and trying to, like, say it without saying it.
Yeah,
and
using, like,
even
you know, Nazi dog whistles and stuff to try and, like, you know, subtly get across like their like poisonous, toxic way of thinking. Speaking of which, the show contains elements of political satire, and many consider the show to be a critique of conservatism and far-right politics, including Eric Kripke. Of when he got asked of, like,
the showrunner,
yeah, because he was, like, baffled at the idea that right-wing figures were idolizing, like, Homelander and comparing Homelander to Trump. Like, are you watching the show?
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, there's a lot of, you know, the writers in the room that are all news junkies and just really fucking furious about everything that's happening in the world. And thank God we have this show that happens to be about the intersection of celebrity and authoritarianism, because that's what superheroes are, right? And so we get to talk about Trump. We get to talk about thoughts and prayers, white nationalism, the fucking NRA. Like, we get to talk about it all, but do it in a satirical way that I think lets us get away with things that you would never be able to get away with on a straightforward drama.
It also makes references to police corruption, police brutality, sexual harassment, and homophobia.
Yeah, because there's, like, points where is it A-Train's brother that gets, like, attacked by police or something?
Yeah, he gets attacked by like Blue Hawk, who's not a police officer. Obviously, it's not, that can't be an allusion to anything. A guy called Blue Hawk who dresses like a police officer and violently polices, like, black neighborhoods. That can't possibly be a reference to anything, right?
And I apologize if any of mine have been perceived as being racist, but that is not who I am, okay? Just ask my friends, many of whom are black, like A-Train.
Yeah, I remember it being somewhat, and, like, A-Train feels powerless because even with superpowers, like, he wasn't able to stop, like, you know, the just systemic racism that's still apparent within the, you know, that world and our world.
That frustrates him. That's like the thing. If he'd have been a more just black and white character, if people will forgive the pun, you wouldn't be able to explore a theme like that, and you wouldn't have had as, in my opinion, the show wouldn't have been as compelling if you didn't have that nuance to the characterization of A-Train, where, yo, he is an irredeemable piece of shit. He does kill people, but just to see him like, he's like, well, I've got all this power. Okay, fix this. Like, when he goes into the head office, he's like, fix this. Like, the guy fucked up my brother. Fix this right now. It's like, well, we can't really do anything. Okay, he'll do an apology. It's like, an apology's not good enough.
Which is fantastic, right? Because
that's what happens to him.
Have the exact same thing of, like, well, it's just the mirroring of what he did to Huey.
Yeah,
of,
and
like,
he gets to experience.
We'll get him to an issue an apology for you. That'll be okay, right?
It's like, no, an apology's not good enough. You need to get this guy off the streets. It's not safe for people for him to be out there. And that's what makes it hilarious, that he doesn't realise he's talking about himself, because he lacks that self-awareness. But as a viewer, you're like, oh, it's cathartic, but also you're watching it like, oh, fuck, yeah. This cat sucks.
That's the thing, right? Is, like, you still feel sorry for him because you still feel sorry that there are people out there being, like... You more feel sorry for the fact that the situation where the brother is able to just, like, hopelessly get beat down by a superhero and nothing can get done about it.
There's nothing that can happen, yeah. And it's like you find yourself just thinking, like, man, this is pretty dire. It's pretty dour. And speaking of which, promotional materials for the 4th season coming out soon include quotes, "Make America Soup Again" and "Soup Lives Matter," which are obviously not references to anything that's happened in the last 5 years, so let's move swiftly on. Although it does mention here, some of the showrunners, including the main one, and a bunch of the writers, and the actors, and producers, and executives on the show, and people from Amazon, and people working in craft services have said that these analogies are intentional and made to cast a political message.
I don't believe that.
But not everyone involved with the show has said that, Lucas. How can that... Like, it's only the showrunner, directors, writers, actors on the show... Like, you know, Garth, Ennis himself have said that all these things, like, you know, intentional and deliberate political statements designed to hold a mirror up to things happening in the world right now. But why should I believe them over a guy on YouTube?
Ironic that the people on YouTube were saying what the people in charge of running the show are saying, and like...
That's always the classic, right, isn't it? Of like, well, no, someone with a beard on YouTube told me to be mad about this thing, so I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it, but someone else has already told me why I need to think about it.
Mm-hmm. It's like, what would the people who created the show know about the show, Karl?
Yeah, like the person who's writing it. And I think the last thing to talk about is just franchise, because despite The Boys, in part being like, you know, just a parody and piss take of like the MCU and the DC Extended Universe, it's become a franchise just by nature of its like, no, just runaway success. So it is a franchise in of itself, and there are various spin-offs planned or in development or have been released. They include Diabolical, Gen V, The Boys, Mexico. So there's going to be a Mexican spin-off. There's also other media, including the Vought News Network, Soup Porn, which Eric Kripke said that the in-universe pornographic superhero film seen briefly in The Boys episode Butcher Baker Candlestick Maker had been produced in full.
Oh my god.
Deeper and Deeper, that's the audible book, or the audio book released by The Deep, actually narrated by Chase Crawford. They've also had appearances in Call of Duty, which includes Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, 3, and Warzone 2.0, and Mortal Kombat 1. In which Homelander's going to make an appearance.
You have chosen war with a god. No, you have.
It was really weird seeing a trailer where, like, Starlight was running around shooting people with a gun.
I still think one of my most fire tweets is when they announced, hey, Homelander's going to be in, like, Call of Duty. And I went, wow, like they're really pushing the boat out by putting a fictional racist into Call of Duty as a guest character. So yes, if you have enjoyed this video and would like to discuss The Boys some more, no spoilers, you can join us in the Wiki Weekends Discord found below. Comment below if you'd like, all that good stuff. You can follow us on our socials, and also tune in tomorrow for another video on The Boys, led by Lucas, on a different subject, but from within the same universe. I've been your host, Karl. I've been joined by Lucas.
Hello there.
And go out there and have the day that you deserve. Cheers, everybody.